Mountains of waste, foaming rivers, polluted water, soil and air. It's all too much. Hello and welcome. I am Sadhika Tiwari and you're watching Eco India. And I am wearing a mask because we're in Delhi and this haze that you see around me is pollution. If I take the mask off, I can't breathe properly, my eyes are tingling. That's how poor the air quality is here right now. Pollution of all types across the globe is a huge problem. But what is the solution to this? Does it require individual efforts, community actions, or state interference? Let's take a look at some of the possibilities, challenges, and opportunities. And now let's move indoors so I can take this mask off. Another problem that almost all of us actively contribute to is waste. India doesn't segregate much of its waste, and Delhi alone has 3 huge man-made mountains of garbage, and the sight of overflowing dumpsters isn't rare. I personally tried segregating waste at my home, but by the time it reached the city dumpster, it was all back together. And this is the case with most areas in Delhi NCR. But sometimes it is us citizens who find solutions.
Not the place for a typical snapshot. Monica Khanna Gulati wants to capture every last detail. She's often out and about in Gurugram photographing illegal dumps.
It's a health hazard for everybody who stays here, for the low-income communities which stay on this side of the road and for the better off people of the city who live on this side of the road.
This dump is located directly on one of Gurugram's trunk roads. The city is part of the Greater Delhi area and is one of India's major financial and technology hubs. Monica Gulati finds its existence completely unacceptable. She regularly gets in touch with the city authorities and passes on photos and information. She hopes that the illegal site will finally be cleared.
The desire of all citizens is that we want a livable city, something which is free of waste, it has clean air and hosts a environmentally friendly supporting system which allows people to live a healthy life.
The Citizens Supervisory Committee was set up in 2018. Monica is one of its members. They come from various areas of civil society, are environmental experts or former government employees. Their aim is to show where the city's waste management system is still not working and where urgent action is needed.
We strongly put forward a suggestion for a monitoring mechanism which could at least oversee what was being done.
More than 2 million people live in Gurugram, and yet 85% of its waste is not sorted and recycled properly. The result? Overflowing municipal landfills and illegal dumps. The biggest problem is posed by bulk waste generators, such as housing estates, companies, schools, or even public authorities. Anywhere where at least 100 kilograms of waste is produced every day. Mo Sengupta from the Center for Science and Environment says the vast majority often simply don't comply with the law.
The legal mandate for them as a waste generator, there are 3-4 basic mandates. The first one is they have to segregate their waste at source. The second one is they have to manage their organic waste within their premises as far as possible, which we call in situ organic waste management. And thirdly, they have to hand over the rest of the waste, the residual waste, to the authorized waste collector.
Here, organic waste is being separated from normal waste and then properly recycled. This plant is part of a housing estate. Bulk waste generators don't have to be a problem. Citizen Supervisory Committee members regularly visit facilities like this one to monitor how well they're working. Residents here have to do their bit too, of course. Garbage collectors can then pick up the separated waste and take it to the appropriate disposal points. To help refine the system, the Citizen Supervisory Committee members are in close contact with the Housing Society. But this example is still an exception here. Providing efficient large-scale waste separation presents a huge challenge to the authorities. The committee's work is therefore all the more appreciated.
Gurugram is a metropolitan city, so a huge number of around the 1600 ton waste is produced per day. So to tackle that, we need a good mechanism, and also we need the public support also. So segregation is the major issue which we think that which is a major hurdle for us. So till the time we do not have the complete segregation at source of the waste, we cannot go for the complete processing.
The Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs estimates that up to 40% of waste in Indian cities comes from bulk waste generators. While a few housing societies are already separating waste, others are at square one. Between 2022 and 2023, the Centre for Science and Environment developed a portal for the registration of bulk waste generators in Gurugram. There are said to be around 3,000 of them, but only 200 separate their waste and dispose of it properly. Environmentalist Smita Ahuja helped develop the portal.
The idea is to map the BWGs completely, give them a unique identity, capture their full details, and also on a weekly and monthly basis, understand their segregation and processing levels, making them accountable for that last bit that is being generated.
To finally find and record all waste producers and set up a professional refuse disposal system everywhere, nothing would please Monica Khanna Gulati more. She hopes the expansion of illegal dumps can be stopped and the sites quickly cleared. But there's still a long way to go before the metropolis of Gurugram can get its garbage problem under control.
What do you know about sulfur? Maybe not much, but in our next story, you will quickly learn that this chemical element is actually present everywhere. It can be useful, but it can also mean harm. Sulfur pollution is yet another outcome of burning fossil fuels. It can contribute to air pollution and acid rains. So how do we deal with something that's omnipresent? Let's find out.
This acid lake, this blue fire, and these colourful rings all exist because of one element, sulfur. The yellow substance can be both completely harmless and extremely poisonous. It's found in our bodies, our food, and also in volcanoes. If you've ever smelled a rotten egg or a fart, the culprit was sulfur. But unfortunately, heating it up also makes a highly toxic gas. It's also responsible for acid rain and contributes to millions of deaths every year. Extracting and burning fossil fuels means we're spewing it into the atmosphere. The story of sulfur is both a looming crisis and an environmental success. Sulfur is one of the more abundant elements in the universe. You can find it in the oceans, the Earth's crust, and the toxic atmosphere of Venus. It's also the third most common mineral in our bodies. They contain around 150 grams of sulfur, but in its solid pure form, it's both tasteless and odorless. Compounds of it are found in broccoli, cauliflower, eggs, and onions. Sulfur is actually responsible for the strong smell that garlic makes when it's crushed. Another sulfur compound gives broccoli and cauliflower their distinctive tastes. And if you find yourself with a particularly smelly onion, that's because of sulfur too. It's also found in water from wells or springs. Another place you'll find sulfur is in the sky.
Little bits of sulfur dioxide up in the atmosphere can serve as what we call cloud condensation nuclei, essentially little platforms for clouds to build around.
Zeke Housefather is a climate scientist and researcher.
Clouds that can be more reflective and bounce more light back to space.
So sulfur actually slows down global warming. But sulfur also has a dark side. It's one of the most reactive elements on the periodic table, so it changes form easily when in contact with other elements. It's also super flammable. The sulfur coating is what keeps matches burning long enough to light a candle. But burning sulfur can look like a hellscape, like at this Indonesian volcano. Lighting a match creates a small quantity of a sulfur gas, and this match is a mini version of the sulfur pollution problem. Those gases formed by these sulfur molecules with other elements are toxic. One of them is hydrogen sulfide, sulfur with 2 hydrogen atoms. It's found naturally in wetlands, swamps, and hot springs. Another nasty sulfur gas is sulfur dioxide, something we've been harming ourselves with on a large scale for a very long time.
So sulfur pollution is mainly caused by burning fossil fuels.
Edwin Sangagnado researches chemical pollution in the environment.
And also industrial activities such as refining petroleum and smelting metals.
Fossil fuels naturally contain sulfur. Their extraction leads to some of the sulfur escaping and forming those gases. Toxic gas is also released when fossil fuels are burned. Another source of sulfur pollution is from metal production. Some metal ores contain sulfur. Purifying the metal can therefore release sulfur into the atmosphere. Fossil fuel use took off around the 1950s before all this information was available. But in the 1970s, people started noticing that the rain was more acidic than it used to be. Too much sulfur in clouds can react with other elements to form sulfuric acid and acid rain. Oceans, lakes, and rivers become more acidic, hurting aquatic life. It also affects the pH of soils.
We know plants, they are really, really sensitive to things like temperature and pH. The lowering of pH is also going to affect how the plants are going to absorb the nutrients that they need to grow.
But it doesn't need to rain down on us to have devastating health effects.
If you light a match a couple times, or if you like sitting around a campfire, the air pollution you breathe isn't good for you. But if you're not doing that all day, every day, it's not going to be that bad for your health. Whereas, if you're living in Beijing and your air looks like a pea soup, that's where it really starts creating various severe medical problems.
And a lot of that sulfur pollution is caused by burning coal. It's responsible for more sulfur pollution than any volcanic eruption. When burned in power plants, sulfur can be removed from emissions by devices called scrubbers. But insufficient money or infrastructure means that often doesn't happen. Worldwide, China has been the largest emitter of sulfur in recent decades due to its heavy reliance on coal. The resulting air pollution is responsible for over 1 million deaths per year. China has recently taken major steps to reduce sulfur emissions. In other countries, the amount of coal being burned is actually going up.
When you are electrifying rural areas, there need to be some energy source. And what is the quick energy source that is resorted to? That's coal.
Sulfur pollution from coal contributed to the near-constant London fog of the 19th century. People died from asthma and bronchitis, which still plague those living near oil refineries and coal plants today. And sulfur particles also form PM 2.5, fine particles that are a significant part of global air pollution. But it isn't all bad news. In recent years, there has been a very big effort to stop acid rain and sulfur gases. Much of the sulfur is removed from oil and gas during the refining process before it's sold to consumers. The extracted sulfur is turned into pesticides, fertilizers, and sulfuric acid. As a result, atmospheric sulfur gases have decreased significantly, and regulations are getting tighter. 2020 saw the first restrictions on shipping fuel.
But in now the last decade or two, there's been more studies about the health impacts of burning this fuel in ports, with a couple studies suggesting that somewhere in the range of 20 to 60,000 people globally may die prematurely due to exposure to sulfur dioxide pollution from shipping.
Removing sulfur from fuels has caused a drop in worldwide pollution, but there's still more sulfur in the atmosphere than there should be. So, while regulations are important, a shift away from fossil fuels is the only thing that will tackle toxic sulfur gases for good.
Very few things in the world can match the beauty of watching the sunset at the Dal Lake in Kashmir. But now the natural beauty of this lake and the livelihoods of those who call it their home are both under threat, and yet again pollution is to blame. Pollution and waste disposal issues have strained the ecosystem of this lake. And now scientists, activists and residents have come together to make the lake better, to restore it and to protect it. But will it be enough?
Shikaras are a popular photo motif for tourists up here. The small water cabs carry vacationers to their accommodation. The houseboats which have been moored on the banks here since British colonial rule. Back then, it was forbidden to build houses along the water. The British left, but the houseboats stayed. Right now, things are a bit calmer on Dal Lake. It's off-season and Manzoor Ahmad Shalla can take a much-needed breather. For generations, he and his family have lived off tourism here. I was born on this lake, and all the people here depend on it to make a living. Before the 1980s, people used the water here for drinking and cooking. But ever since 1991, a steady rise in human activity has led to increased pollution. Dal Lake is located in the Kashmir Valley, at an altitude of around 1500 meters between the Zabarwan mountains and the megacity of Srinagar. More than 44 million liters of wastewater flow out of the city into the surrounding area every day. There are also around 50,000 people living around the lake itself, who dispose of their waste on the shore. Ankara and her father have come here for a vacation from Ireland. They are disappointed with the state of the lake.
I think there's always this connotation with a lake that it's going to be nice and blue, or, but I think very different because they're living on it, and obviously you can see there's a lot of rubbish and a lot of plastics that are still just thrown in it.
65-year-old Ghulam Rasool has long had enough of the situation. Every 20 days or so, he and other residents of his village set about collecting the garbage left behind by both local people and tourists. But he knows that more needs to be done. The influx of wastewater into the lake has to stop, he says. And so, for several years now, he has also been working to develop a local sewage system. The drainage system you are looking at here was inspired by one we built 20 years ago. Our family dug 2 trenches for 21 houses, and the drainage flows down to a deep pit we made. At first, I took the initiative to stop the sewage runoff in my own home, using what I knew and on my own volition. When the local administration saw what I had done, it decided to build the drainage system you see here, connecting the whole area to it. There is still some work left to do, but it will be finished soon. From there, the drainage network runs right around the area, serving the entire neighborhood, which is home to around 120 families. Following on from the success in his own village, Ghulam Rasool now wants to build a sewage network in other villages too. Many of his neighbors grow their own food, earning money through the sale of cabbage leaves, carrots, and lotus roots. They're all interested in having a cleaner lake, and so they get together regularly to work at it. Siltation is another big problem in the lake. We try to tackle it ourselves using traditional methods like dredging canals and removing the silt ourselves, and then using it as fertilizer in our fields. Residents are working together to save the lake. If anything happens to this waterway, we will lose everything. So other residents, including farmers, boatmen, and other lake dwellers belonging to 8 communities, need to get on board and work with us. A few years ago, the government decided it had a radical, quick solution to the problem. It resettled around 10,000 of Dal Lake's residents, moving them to the other side of Srinagar. But they have no way of earning a living there, so they come here during the day to earn money. The government has undertaken other measures too. It has invested around 30 million euros in dredgers and floating sewage systems in order to prevent the untreated inflow of feces, oils and soap from the lake's houseboats. and it has installed sewage treatment plants on the shores of the lake. But Professor Manzoor Ahmad Shah, a botanist at Kashmir University, says such solutions don't go far enough.
It has been a system which has been largely so far managed as an engineering system through engineering approaches. Just go for dredging, put these pipes, put these aeration systems. We have to understand the ecology of the science of ecology of the system in its totality.
In recent years, the lake's water level has dropped, destroying the habitat of some native animal species. Meanwhile, invasive plant species have spread, harming the lake's ecosystem. But there are possible solutions.
Through science, we are trying to find some value, for example, try to find some dyes, waxes, paper, some medicine, out of these invasive species. And if we get a breakthrough, it is a zero investment biomass, plentiful, available all around there, and you can easily use it.
The botanist also suggests implementing a 5% tax on tourist-based income. The resulting revenue could be put directly towards recovery measures for the lake. Manzoor Ahmad Shah very much hopes that Dal Lake will recover soon. It's the only way to ensure that tourists will keep coming here, and that in turn will enable future generations like that of his children and grandchildren to earn a livelihood.
Often it takes a hero to make things better, and usually they don't really wear a cape. Certainly not our next one from Tamil Nadu. Locally known as the Nail Man, he ensures that the trees around him are healthy and protected. His commitment and hands-on approach are inspiring a larger movement towards urban tree conservation. Let's meet this man who is doing all of this alongside his day job.
Subhash Srinivasan is a policeman who patrols the street of Ramanathapuram, a small town in the southeast Indian state of Tamil Nadu. And he is on a special after-hours mission. Soon enough, he has found a culprit. Not the tree, but one of the countless nails used to pin up advertising boards. They are small, but they do serious damage to the trees, the sub-inspector tells us. So he makes short work of the offender. In and around Ramanathapuram, you won't find a single tree without ads nailed onto it. What I do is remove them. Trees are our lifesavers. They give us oxygen, and it's unfair to harm them by hammering iron nails into them just for the sake of ads. Just as our bodies are protected by our skin, trees are protected by their bark. So nailing advertising placards to trees damages that outer tissue, and those wounds could eventually destroy the entire tree, says District Forest Officer Hemlata S.
Nailing a tree damages the bark, creating a hole that makes it susceptible to infections and diseases. And during the rainy season, there is also a risk of fungal infections. Subhash is doing great work, the kind of activity that all of us should be doing. Because as per the Constitution of India, it is the duty and responsibility of every citizen to protect nature. Preserving nature is not only the duty of the Forest Department, but also the responsibility of each and every citizen. It is hugely important that we save trees in urban environments.
After removing the nails, Srinivasan applies a medical paste made of turmeric, sesame oil, and neem oil. It helps to prevent infections where the trees have been breached. When I go to other places like Chennai or Trichy or Madurai, I carry my tools with me. So in my leisure time, I'll do the same work there too. I usually circulate an awareness notice among the locals, and I get involved in campaigns about the importance of trees. Trees are so important. It's impossible for us to stop breathing for just 5 minutes. So even if we are not praising and protecting them, we should at least not be harming them. And in the 20 years since he began, Subhash Srinivasan has won a series of awards for his
tree-saving efforts.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Community efforts, individual action, and innovative ideas are paramount in our fight against pollution. We'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas. Let's keep the conversation going. You can email us or reach out to me directly on my social media handles. I will see you next week. Until then, take care, goodbye, namaskar.